Let's do the daf today. We are continuing along our conversation about an Ovei Kochavim prohibiting Jewish wine by coming in contact with it because of a suspicion that he's going to do some kind of incantation while he's swirling the wine. And we also talked about the idea that even when he's having indirect contact with the wine, there could also be some level of prohibition. And what's ambiguous is that sometimes the Gemara, when it says the word asr, it means asr bahana'a, completely. You can't even benefit from it by selling it. And sometimes it only means asr b'shti. And sometimes we have to rely on Rashi, and sometimes there's a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos. Anyway, we're up to Daf Samach Amud Aleph, where it says, like the sixth line, Omer of Papa, Ovei Kochavim Adana v'Yisrael Akuba Chamra Asir. That if an Ovei Kochavim is holding the barrel and pouring out of the barrel into a container, like a pail that's being held by a Jew, so the wine is asr. My taima ki ka'asi mikol Ovei Kochavim ka'asi. And the reason is because we're concerned that the wine is flowing because of the inertia of the akum. And so therefore, and Rashi points out, it's chamra asr bahana. It's no different from wine that is diluted by an akum, where we said it's asr even bahana, and this is midirabanan, because of lech amr nazira, we tell a nazir to don't come close, it's a safeguard. So here too, it's asr bahana. But Yisrael adana v'ovei kochavim akuva chamer shari. But if the Yisrael is the one who's pouring out the contents of the barrel, and the akum is holding a stationary pail, so then the wine does not become prohibited. However, v'i mitzadei tzedudi asr. If, however, when the akum is holding the pail, he tilts it to one side in order to catch the wine, so Rashi gives two explanations why it's asr. Either it's asr because we suspect that as the pail is being filled, he's touching the wine, in which case the wine will be asr even bahana'a. The second explanation is the wine is only asr b'shatiyah, you can't drink it, but you can benefit from it, because we're concerned that while tilting it, he may have caused movement of the wine. Not as bad as pouring out wine, which is asr even bahana'a, but at least it's somewhat asr. Now, Amar Rav Papa, Hai Ovei Kochavim Dedori Zika V'Ka'azl Yisrael Achorei, Mal Yeshari Dilo Mekarkesh, Chasera Asr Dilma Mekarkesh. Next case. An akum is holding a flask. A flask is a leather pouch that is used to hold liquid, and it's a sealed pouch. So if a Jew is following the Ovei Kochavim to make sure that he's not doing anything to tamper with the wine, so then as long as the flask is completely filled, so the wine does not have an opportunity to slosh back and forth through his walking, so then the wine is okay. If, however, the flask is only partially filled with wine, so there's an opportunity for the wine to slosh back and forth in the flask, we're worried that maybe the akum is, while he's walking, is deliberately sloshing it for the sake of avodah zarah. Okay? Now, kuva malya asir, dilma naga, chasera shari dilo naga. But the converse is true by an open pail or bucket of wine that the akum is carrying. So even when the Jew is behind him, it's still going to be a problem. If it's filled, so then it's asr, because we're worried that because it's so full, the goy is touching the wine. But if it's only partially full, so that the wine is well below the top of the bucket, you don't have to worry about that, and therefore it's permitted. Rav Ashi Omar, so Rav Ashi disagrees with the first part regarding the flask. He says, Zika bein malya u bein chasera shari, my taima ein derech nisuch bekach. Rav Ashi says a sealed flask will always be permitted, regardless of whether it's full or partially full. And the reason is because sealed flasks is not the way, a goy is going to slosh it for avodah zarah. If it's in a sealed pouch, that's not a problem at all.
It's a good thing, too, because the wine bottles are not completely filled that are sealed in the liquor store.
That's true. That's an interesting point. I'm wondering if that's the reason, right? We say as long as it has a double seal, it's perfectly fine. So Paul is suggesting, well, what if a goy were to pick up a double-sealed bottle and say, So So it says it's not a problem, says Rav Ashi. Okay. What?
That would be a terrible problem in modern times.
It would be a terrible problem. Right.
Well,
that's the performance of the more things. If you shake the bottle, it doesn't mean anything. It's shaking. According to Rav
According to Rav Ashi, that's
Right.
what Paul is saying.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Ma'atzra zaira. This is a certain kind of wine press where you're not coming directly in contact with the grapes when you press the grapes. There are wooden planks that are on top of the press, and by applying pressure to the planks, you press the grapes. So there's never direct contact. So the Gemara says, Rav Papi Shori Rav Ashi v'Itemer Rav Shimi Bar Ashi Osar. There's a machlokus here between these two Amoraim as to whether it is permitted, if a goy is stepping on the planks or not, to apply pressure, whether that's permitted, the wine, or prohibited. So, Bekocho kuli alma pligi da asir. Everyone agrees that if the goy is applying direct pressure on the planks, that the wine becomes asir, because even though it's not touching it, but his inertia is being applied to the grapes. But ki pligi bekoach kocho. The machlokus is, what about an indirect force? For example, they used to have like a wheel and pulley system, a crank system, where you crank the crank and the wood increasingly presses down on the grapes. So what if the akum is operating the crank? That's the issue. That's where there's a machlokus. So that's Rav Papi says it's okay, and Rav Ashi and some say Rav Shimi says it's aser. Ika da amri bekoach kochel kuli amalo pligi deshari ki pligi bekochel. Others learn differently, that when he's just operating the crank, so it's an indirect inertia from the akum, everyone would agree that that's okay. The only machlokus is when he's applying pressure directly on the planks with his body. Now, hava uvda bekoach kocho va'asar Rav Yaakov min Nahar Pekod. But as we see from Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pekod, we go like the first version, that when it's koach kocho, when he's operating the crank and it's an indirect inertia, we nevertheless are going to prohibit like Rav Ashi. Now, hahu chavisa de ifka'a leorcha idri hahu obe kochavim chavka sharye rafram bar papa v'temer rafuna bereder Rav Yehoshua lizvuna le'ovdei kochavim. So the once was a maisa where a barrel of wine cracked, and the crack was a vertical crack from the top to the bottom of the barrel. An akum ran over, good-intentioned akum, ran over to hug the barrel, literally, so that he could keep the barrel together to avoid the liquid from seeping out. So the concern is that in the course of hugging the barrel, he's touching the seeping out wine, and granted that there's no possibility of shichshuch, of swirling or sloshing the wine inside, but he's coming in direct contact. So in this situation, Raf from Bar Papa and some say Rafuna Bered Rav Yehoshua prohibit the wine from drinking, but they still said you could get hana by selling it, because there's for sure no shichshuch. But v'hani mili depaka orka avolapusye afilu b'shasiya shari my time a maisa levena ka'avid. But that's only when the crack is a vertical crack. But if it's a horizontal crack, such that he's just got to apply his weight on the top of the barrel in order to seal the crack, then even you can drink it afterwards, because all he's doing is the act of a brick. What we mean to say is, sort of like a cinder block, just to weigh down the top of the barrel. It's not as much of, because he's working with gravity, there's not as much of his inertia that's invested into the barrel, less of a concern that he's actually going to touch the wine, and therefore it's not a problem.
Where's the crack on the top? Like the top, or around
it's on the side of the barrel. But it's a horizontal crack.
Oh, I see. So he's pushing down.
So he's pushing down so that the liquid doesn't seep out. Now, hahu ovi kochavim dishtakach dahavakoi b'ma'atzarta. The next case, there was once an empty wine press that was Jewish owned, and normally, the wine press, like I mentioned, you go to Oxnard in the winery, and no non-Jews are allowed on the floor where the wine press is. One day, they open up shop and they discover that there's an akum mamish walking in the wine press. What are you doing here? Get out of here. But now the question is, how do we kosher the wine press? Because there's residual, on the walls of the wine press, there's usually residual grape juice. And his contact with that could potentially taint any future wine that's pressed in that wine press. So Amar Ravashi, Ika toifech lahatfiach boi hadacha boi niguv, v'ilo bahadacha ba'al masagile. So we're going to see later in the Gemara that there's a method of cleaning out a surface that has wine that may have been come in contact with an akum. So it depends how machmir we have to be. If by touching the wall of the wine press, there's so much moisture that by touching it, you take your finger, and by touching your finger to a dry surface, you get that surface wet. So then you have to do a higher level of cleaning, which is you have to apply ash, which is an absorbent. It absorbs all of the moisture. Then you clean out the ash by rinsing off with water. And then you apply a second layer of ash to absorb all of the water that was used to wash off. That's the method of koshering in that situation. But if there's a less moisture on the walls of the wine press, such that when you press it, you feel the moisture, but by touching a dry surface, you don't transfer that moisture onto the dry surface. There's not enough moisture. So then all you need to do is rinse out the wine press without using the ash. Let us go on.
If the screw is moved by an animal in that wine press, is that enough to remove that he would not be a machlokas whatsoever? Let's say you tie the wine press to the animal, right? Moves around.
Well, then what's the akum's involvement?
Well,
he's driving the animal?
Yeah, he's driving the animal.
It seems for sure that that's not a
Far enough
problem.
removed.
Yeah. There's no koach of his at all, because it's the animal's
even though he's
koach.
leading the animal.
Presumably so. I mean, we have no indication that we should be so machmir.
Depends on the belief of the animal.
He's wearing a yarmulke, right? Okay.
You can make the animals.
Ove, next mission. Ove kolchavim shenimtza omed b'tzad habor shel yayin. Im yesh lo milva alav aser, ein lo milva alav mutter. So I come to my wine press, which now has freshly pressed wine in the vat, the pit that's beneath the wine press where the wine flows, the juice flows into. All of a sudden I discover an akum standing right there by the bore. I don't know. What is he doing? Is he tampering with my wine? Do I have to be choshesh that maybe he touched my wine? So it works like this. If he's my creditor, in which case he feels he can take liberty with my financial assets, including my wine, so then the wine is going to be usher. But if he doesn't have any financial advantage over me, he's got no rights to my finances, so then I can assume that he didn't tamper with it because he's fearful that I'm going to sue him for causing me damage. See, if he's my creditor, so then even if I discovered that he's tampered with my wine, he can always say, fine, I'll just use it to collect my debt. You give me the wine. So therefore, he doesn't have the same level of fear. And that's the difference. So, nafal labor va'ola, madado bekana, hitiz es atzira bekana, o shahaya matfiach al pichavis mirusachas b'chol elu hayamaisa va'amru yimocher. The following cases are cases where the akum has had indirect contact with the wine, or even when he's had direct contact with the wine, but we can ascertain through the circumstances that there was no shichshuch for avodah zarah. And in all of these cases, the rabbis therefore said, you can benefit from the wine even though you cannot drink it. So the first case is where an akum falls into the pit by accident and he drowns, and we got to fish him out. So even though he had direct contact, we're not concerned that while he was drowning, he decided to incant for his avodah zarah.
I mean, right. We wouldn't want to drink it either.
I would think the exact opposite.
Well, he's so panicking. He may be praying to his gods, but he's not offering them a libation with this wine. He's saying, get me out of here, right? He's not. So that's the reason why.
He's just whining.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's
oh my gosh. If he's using a yardstick to measure the depth of the wine, so then he's coming in indirect contact with the wine, but it's clear that he's doing it for industrial purposes, not for avodah zarah purposes. If, let's say, he takes a yardstick to swat away a wasp that's resting on the wine, that's also, again, a situation. He's come in contact, but it's not for idolatrous purposes, so you can't drink it, but you can sell it. Or he takes a stick or his hand in order to remove the froth that's frothing on top of the wine. So in all of those cases, we say that it's that it's okay. So for Hana, right? And for Reb Shimon matir, and Reb Shimon says, once we're not concerned about idolatry, so then you can even drink it yourself. It's totally not a problem. Natoles hachavis v'zarka b'chamasa labor zehayamaisa v'hichshiru. If the goy is angry at something, you didn't pay me on time, or you shortchanged me, and he gets so upset that he picks up a barrel and he throws it into the bore. So this was a maisa this was once happened, and the rabbis permitted it. Now, as we'll see, it seems to be the difference is that even the rabbis here are totally permissive, because when the barrel comes in contact with the wine, it's no longer in contact with the akum, because he's thrown it as a projectile. So it's no longer, he's not in direct contact with it anymore at all. So that's why we're more makel. But we'll see, we'll have to qualify that.
Is there an issue of the chavis as opposed to anything? I mean,
it doesn't say, well, the chavis could be an empty chavis.
it could be anything.
It could be any projectile, it seems, from the Mishnah. But we'll see. The Gemara now says, Omar Shmuel v'hu sheyesh lo milva al oso yayin. So Shmuel really radically qualifies the Mishnah. He says the only time that the wine is going to be usher if the akum is my creditor is if the wine itself is collateral on that debt. If the wine is not collateral on that debt, then even though I may owe him money, I still don't have to worry that he's going to tamper with my wine. Amar Avashi masnisa namidika. I can infer this from a Mishnah we're going to learn in tomorrow's daf. Ditnan hamitahir yeno shel obi kochavim v'nosno birshuso v'hala kosev lo hiskabalti mimcha ma'os mutter. Aval im yirtze Yisrael lahotziu ve'in manichu ad she'itein lama'osav zeh hayamaisa beveit sha'an va'asra. That's the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? There was a common practice that a Jew would want to manufacture wine, but he doesn't own a vineyard. So he would go to a Gentile who owns a vineyard and says, I would like to purchase grapes from you on credit. I will process them into kosher wine. I'll do that myself. I'll keep the sealed barrels in your warehouse, and then I'll sell the barrels, and then I'll pay you for the grapes. I'll pay you, so we'll both end up profiting from this partnership. So it depends. It depends. Now, am I allowed to keep these sealed barrels in the warehouse of the akum and not be concerned that he's going to tamper with the barrels? So the Mishnah says that it depends. If the akum tells him, go ahead, don't worry about paying me for the grapes, go ahead and take the barrels and sell them, so then there's no direct sort of collateral between the barrel of wine and the debt that he owes him for the grapes, and therefore you don't have to worry that maybe he's going to tamper with the barrels. But if the akum tells you, you do not have permission to take these barrels of wine until you pay me for the grapes from my vineyard, so then you have to be concerned that maybe the akum is going to tamper with the wine because he feels some financial sort of lordship over, or some financial control over these barrels. And what is the inference from there? Zahaya Maisa Beveit Sha'an. This was once a Maisa where the akum refused to release the barrels of freshly pressed wine until the Jew paid him for the grapes, and they therefore said that the barrels are aser. Taima de'in menicho, ha-menicho shari, shmamina, milvalos yain ba'inan shmamina. So what are we inferring from this story? That the only reason why the rabbis were machmir is because the akum viewed those specific barrels of wine as collateral on the debt for the grapes. And that's the whole reason why they asered it. But as long as the akum said, go ahead and take the barrels, you still owe me for the wine, but for the grapes, but go ahead and sell the wine and you'll pay me whenever you get the money. So I have a lien on your property, but it's not specifically these barrels that are the collateral, and therefore the wine is permitted, because we're not worried that the akum is going to feel that he has financial control over dafka these barrels. And therefore, you don't have to worry that he's going to tamper with them. Okay, that proves our point. And that proves, that the halacha is like Shmuel. Next, nafal labor va'ola. If the akum falls into the bore and he drowns, and we have to fish him out, so we don't have to worry that the wine became aser bahana. Amar of Papa lo shanu ela sha'alames aval olachai aser. My time, Amar of Papa, the dami alei ki yom edom. This goes back to Rabbi Black's point. He says it's only true that we don't have to worry that he's going to be using the wine for idolatry, is if he taka drowned in the vat. But if he didn't drown, and we were able to fish him out before he drowned, so then on his way out, he may have sloshed the wine to thank his gods.
When he was no longer panicking.
When he was no longer panicking. And he's now, Cyrilla, you've delivered me! Right? And so therefore we have to worry that the wine shall be usher even bahana in that situation. Because he's going to view this as a holiday. Okay. Midado bikana kol elu hayamaisa v'armu yimacher Reb Shimon matir. So all of these cases where the goy has indirect contact, so the rabbi said that it's usher bishtia but mutter bahana, and Reb Shimon says once it's mutter, because you're not worried about idolatry, it's completely mutter even for a Jew to drink. Amar of Ada bar Ahava yanuchalo Reb Shimon brachos al rosho kishu matir afilu b'shasiya uchishu oser afilu bahana. So Rav Ada says in a strange statement, he says, may all the blessings in the world rest on Reb Shimon's head, because when he's matir, when he's permissive, he is permissive to the extreme, and when he's prohibitive to the extreme. It's either mutter b'shtia for Reb Shimon or aser bahana. According to, there's no middle ground. So why is he praising him for this? It would seem to me that he's praising him for this because Reb Shimon has such clarity of black and white. Everything's black and white for Reb Shimon. And that's actually a good, it's a virtue for a posek to not have any, gray areas. Sometimes it's only aser bishtia, but it's mutter bahana. He says, no. Reb Shimon is very, very black and white. It's either totally mutter or totally aser, and that's a great way to live your life from a halachic standpoint. It may not be a great way to live your life when you're dealing with human beings, right? But when you're dealing with halachic realities, so this is a great virtue. So Amar Reb Chia Bereda Abba Bar Nachmeni Amar Reb Chisda Amar Rava Amrila Amar Reb Chisda Amar Ze'eri Halacha Karib Shimon. So there's different opinions as to actually who made the statement in whose name, but these Amoraim say that the halacha is like Reb Shimon, that if it's permitted, it's permitted even for shtia. And Ika da Amri Amar Reb Chisda Amar Li Abba Bar Chanan Hachi Amar Ze'eri Halacha Karib Shimon. And some say that Reb Chisda said that Abba Bar Chanan said in the name of Ze'eri that the halacha is like Reb Shimon. But the Gemara surmises and says, Ve'ein halacha Karib Shimon. But at the end of the day, we don't paskin like any of these. And even though, it's praiseworthy to lead your life in this black and white way, but you know what? Even in halacha, there's gray area. So, and that's how we paskin. That sometimes we're going to be machmir, but not all the way. Weiter. Not al chabes v'zarka b'chamasa labor zeha yamaisa v'hichshiru, that if a Gentile picks up a barrel in his anger and throws it in the vat. So this was a situation once in Beit Sha'an, and the rabbis permitted it. They basically said that the wine is still kosher, totally kosher, even bishtia. Now, Amar Ravashi, Kol shebezav tamei ba'ovi kochavim osiyai. Kol shebezav tamei, kama ba'ovi kochavim osiyai nesech. Period. Kol shebezav tahor kama ba'ovi kochavim ein osiyai nesech. The Gemara is creating a parallel, which we saw before, between Tumah and the contact that creates Tumah and the contact that creates Yayin Nesach when an Akum comes in contact. And it basically says like this: a Zav is a person who has had a gonorrheal emission. When he touches food and other types of usually it's food items, he renders those food items Tameh. So the same kind of contact that for a Zav will render items Tameh, the same thing will hold by an Akum, that when he comes in contact with those things, the same way that a zav comes in contact and renders things tameh, the same properties exist. So therefore, even if the zav touches things indirectly, like via a stick, he'll render them tameh, in the same way that an akum, when he touches things indirectly, will also render things tameh. But the Gemara now says, Eisvei Rav Huna l'Rav Ashi. But let me show you where there's no parallel, which is in the following case. So we're making an inference from the Mishnah. The only reason why the rabbis permitted the akum throwing the barrel into the vat is because he was upset. But it's mashma that if he wasn't upset and he was totally in control of his emotions, is in the moment and knows exactly what he's doing, then throwing it into the vat is going to be usher, will render the wine usher. Now, why should that be? If a zav throws a projectile at a piece of food, he doesn't render it tameh because he's not holding on to the object anymore. Why then should it be that if a Gentile throws something into a vat of wine, that the wine should become usher? That's the question. And the Gemara answers, Hasam dekazul minei uminei. Answers the Gemara that in reality, when he releases a projectile and it lands in wine, then even when he's not angry and he's in the moment, it's not going to become usher. What was the case by the wine that the Mishnah was referring to, where he was rolling a big barrel into a vat and he was upset? If he was not upset and he was in the moment and quite cognizant, because he's rolling the barrel in, there's a possibility that he's still touching the barrel as it's dropping into the vat. And that's the reason why we would be machmir if he wasn't upset and he was doing this with intent. Because our concern would be is that maybe he's got some intention of spoiling the wine through avodah zarah. That it's only when he's rolling it in his wrath, where we see clearly he's not aware of what he's doing, that we say that the wine is mutter. But in hachinami, that if he throws something, even if he's totally in the moment and aware of what's going on, he will never render the wine usher. Because he's totally let go. And this is where we'll hold it for today. A guten Erev Shabbos.